Tune in to Awake Radio, straight talk and straight words coming right from my mouth. Freedom of speech. And good evening or good afternoon or good morning. We are back with Luca Mino on Learn to Unlearn on Awake Radio. I hope everybody's doing good today. Right here, we're 12:05 on the 27th of January. And on the show today, we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. We got some good Nickelback songs as well to play. I want to talk about military officers for 9/11 truth. Talk about scandals rocking our world and what's going on and how to find truth and if it is even the truth that we have. And I even got my mother-in-law in there somewhere. But I'd like to start off with a little story because I think it's important. And it's like a little wink to start the show off. I was sitting in the waiting room of the pain clinic to see my doctor because I have a collapsing back. I have what's it called? Those long words, spinal stenosis and spinal arthritis, and anyway, degenerative disc disease. That's the one I was looking for. And the phone rings in my pocket, and it was my mother-in-law wanting to speak to my sweetheart, who's at home at the time. So I told her, I get up and I run by the door so nobody would hear me, and I was a bit in pain, and I told her softly, please pray for me. And I said it softly out of my embarrassment so that nobody would hear. And right as I turned the corner of the waiting room to sit back down, there's a gentleman sitting right there with a breathing apparatus. He's an older man and far worse shape than me. He looks up at me and smiles the best he can. And he says, "I will pray for you." Because he heard me. And I thought, isn't that amazing? People with their faith and their own sacred beliefs that they hold dear. And they're always the first to place themselves last and pray for others. It was a humbling experience. And I even have his permission to tell it. It really amazed me. What's the moral of the story, let's say? Well, whenever you think you have it rough, someone else has it a lot more difficult life than you do. And it's true, really. It's a hard one to swallow. So there you go. And that was really neat. And when he said, "I will pray for you," there were like 15 or 20 other people in the waiting room, and they heard it. And the guy next to me on the other side says, "Yes, we should all pray for each other." And all of a sudden this conversation starts about praying. And I think a lot of us have the wrong idea about praying and about spiritual beliefs. And I'm seeing all this stuff on social media. About God and, Jesus is for me and this and that and and I hate Muslims, and you got all this stuff going on about religions. And I keep telling people, come on guys, guys and girls, religion is personal, and that's what got a lot of people killed in the world, this religious stuff and religious beliefs. I tell them, I said, if you're happy with your belief system, you're happy with your religion or your faith or whatever, your spirituality, you don't need to go flaunting it on Facebook or flaunting it somewhere and, trying to convert other people and spreading it all over the place. It's personal. Keep it to yourself and, give other people some space. Don't go talking about that stuff. I had a few fights on Facebook about that just this week. But to begin the show, I need to revisit 9/11 again. The never-ending and enlightening subject of 9/11. And while I was getting my show together, I saw something very interesting. I didn't know Paul O'Neill, who was George Bush's Treasury Secretary, was fired from his job for allegedly disagreeing with the former president's policy on tax cuts And O'Neill has revealed, a whistleblower, right? He's revealed that Bush had asked him prior to 9/11 attacks to find a way for him to invade Iraq. I don't know which is worse. The fact that 9/11 was an inside job, or the fact that people out there don't really care. They don't really care that it was. I think it's probably too overwhelming for most people. And maybe it's up to us, the people that understand it and the people that are right smack in the middle of it, to do something about, talking about it. September 11, 2001. The criminal enterprise of my own government, the assassination of 3,000 people on that day. Not that it's a big deal to them since they did it before. Let's see. The numbers were smaller, but on December 7th, 1941, they killed 2,408 of their own people in Pearl Harbor. And we really need to emphasize that this was a false flag. This was a coup d'etat on their own people, this inside job. And as far as Pearl Harbor, more and more of us know by now that FDR knew at least 6 weeks in advance of the attack, and they needed it to get into the war. But about 9/11, the killing of 3,000 Americans, not only that, but sickening how many others because of the asbestos and the aftermath of it all. It's unimaginable to me, and it still is. 14, 15 years later, this is the norm. This is what they want you to think. Terror coming from the outside, right. Muslims on 9/11, Muslims with box cutters. And not only this absurdity, but the fact that you can fly around American airspace for about 90 minutes without being obstructed in the least by the authorities. There are amazing sites, and I'm going to do a plug here for one of them. On Facebook, it's called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, where over 2,000 architects and engineers get together to dispel the original commission report. And also, another really good source for 9/11 Truth is called Ken Doc. KENDOC, kendoc911.wordpress.com. The most comprehensive, up-to-date, and irrefutable evidence gathered in showing the truth of what happened that day, displaying 15 hard, undeniable facts about this event. And I really suggest that people who want the truth go tear it apart. It's truly a masterpiece. That's kendoc911.wordpress.com. But for now, let's content ourselves with yet another important organization that I wanted to talk about that is speaking out. It's called Military Officers for 9/11 Truth. Another piece of the puzzle that's unraveling. In particular, an outspoken lieutenant colonel who is coming forward to shout out about this and what he has on his conscience. Now, don't mind me if I stutter a little bit, because this is difficult to say and difficult to read a little bit, but Lieutenant Colonel Robert Bowman, I need to say no more. Check this out. PhD, U.S. Air Force, retired. Director of Advanced Space Programs Development under Presidents Ford and Carter. U.S. Air Force fighter pilot with 100 combat missions. PhD in Aeronautics and Nuclear Engineering at Caltech. Former head of the Department of Aeronautical Engineering and Assistant Dean at the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. He's also a 22-year Air Force career man. He also taught mathematics and English at the University of Southern California, the University of Maryland, and Phillips University. This guy gets up and takes the mic and destroys the 9/11 Commission report, as most of us do. A document that's built on lies and cover up, and they don't mind doing it, and they do it every day. So I got this clip here. It's a bit longer than my usual clips, but I need for us to hear it, and I'll break it off if it's no longer relevant after the main part has played. But this is really important, and I think we should hear it. If we're interested in finding out what the truth is and spreading and exposing the truth, like I have sworn to do as a citizen of the United States, as a patriot. Let's have a listen.
As a pilot, I concur with Colonel Gapp's analysis of the gross improbabilities in the official conspiracy theory. And as an old interceptor pilot, I share his puzzlement over the lack of interceptors that fateful morning. As a career military officer, I'd like to concentrate on the enormous harm the official 9/11 conspiracy theory has done to our military establishment and to the people in it. Using 9/11 as the excuse, the multinational corporations and bankers have used our brave young troops as cannon fodder in their corporate wars of aggression. They have systematically taken away our constitutional rights, including those of our military personnel. The entire war on terror is phony. And it would be even if you believed the ludicrous official conspiracy theory about 9/11. Both wars were planned before 9/11. The war of aggression against Afghanistan was in retaliation for the Taliban refusing UNICAL rights to build a gas pipeline across Afghanistan to get trillions of dollars worth of gas from the Caspian Sea to their tankers in the ocean. The military leadership knew it had nothing to do with the Taliban harboring Osama bin Laden. The Taliban had offered to give us Osama for trial, but the Bush administration ignored the offer for two reasons. One, they had no evidence against Osama, and according to the FBI, still don't. And two, the war had already been planned in detail to secure that gas pipeline. The war against Iraq was outlined in the PNAC document, Rebuilding America's Defenses, published before George W. Bush even became president. Its purpose was to provide a military staging base from which to control the entire Middle East and its tens of trillions of dollars worth of oil and gas. Now, the authors of that document admitted in it that the American people would never go along with their plans unless there was a catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor, unquote. Well, 9/11 provided that event. Yet they were unable to tie Iraq to 9/11, no matter how hard they tried. So they came up with a new excuse, WMD, weapons of mass destruction. It is here that we in the military saw through their charade. They had us mass 150,000 troops in one small area in Kuwait, awaiting the start of shock and awe. If our military commanders had even the slightest thought that Saddam Hussein might have had even one WMD, they never would have deployed their troops so that they could be wiped out in a single attack with one WMD. The truth is that our government knew there were no WMD in Iraq. Our people in the military were put in a horrible position. Either sacrifice their career and their freedom by refusing orders, or knowingly participate in a war of aggression against their oath of office and the Nuremberg principles enshrined in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So we have two corporate wars of aggression. wars in which we are making the same mistake as in my war, Vietnam. We are fighting the people who live there. What has been the result? About 5,500 of our finest have died. The lives of 40,000 of our injured soldiers will never be the same. Tens of thousands of our young men and women have severe psychological problems because of what they have seen and what they have done. Hundreds of thousands have been poisoned by depleted uranium and will suffer lives of pain and disability and will father thousands of children with severe birth defects. Our military services are depleted and demoralized. The VA system is underfunded and overwhelmed. The National Guard and Reserves have been subjected to tour after tour, disrupting lives for even the lucky ones who return unscathed. Jobs have been lost, homes have been foreclosed, marriages have been destroyed, children have been estranged, and for what? We have alienated our friends around the world and made new enemies. We have created thousands of new recruits for Osama bin Laden, whether he's alive or dead. And we have further endangered the American people, and all because of 9/11. You know, there's massive evidence of a cover-up with respect to 9/11 itself. I've spoken with both Governor Kane and Congressman Hamilton, the co-chairs of the commission, and they both say that there are outright falsehoods in the final report. Never mind all the omissions. The report over which they had no control. It was written in the Bush White House by Philip Zelikow. Now, when you combine this with the confiscation of videotapes, audio tapes, black boxes, and other evidence by the FBI, it is clear that regardless of who was responsible for 9/11, the subsequent cover-up was itself a conspiracy involving elements of the Bush White House and the intelligence establishment. To prevent further 9/11s, we must get to the truth about all those involved in the last one. You know, the American people have never been told who was really responsible for 9/11. Dedicated researchers, like some we've heard today, have proven that it could not have happened the way the Bush administration said it did. Hijacked airliners do not fly around for an hour and 40 minutes without being intercepted, unless our air defense system was deliberately sabotaged. And 19 Arabs with box cutters couldn't have done that. Indestructible black boxes, and by the way, they're not really black, they're bright orange, but never mind. Indestructible black boxes do not evaporate in the same fire from which an unharmed passport floats to the street below. Airliners, all of whose parts carry identifying numbers, do not crash without leaving a shred of evidence as to what they were. You know, the truth about 9/11 is that after 9 years, we still don't know the truth about 9/11, and we should, and so should the families of victims. And let us always remember, the victims of 9/11 include not just the roughly 3,000 people who lost their lives that day, but the 5,500 military personnel who have lost their lives in the Afghan and Iraqi wars, as well as the hundreds of thousands of innocent Afghan and Iraqi civilians. All of these victims and their families cry out for a new independent investigation of 9/11. Only when the official myth is exposed and the truth told will the wars and occupations end, the creation of new victims stopped, and our military returned to its constitutional task of protecting our borders and our people, not the financial interests of multinational corporations. This one change in military mission, eliminating the mission of protecting the global financial interests of multinational corporations, will allow us to greatly enhance our national security and reduce the defense budget by 80%. But it's not going to happen until people learn the truth about 9/11. Only then will people understand that our security is not enhanced by sending our working class youth around the world to kill the sons and daughters of working people in other countries. Only then will people understand that our security is not enhanced by sending our children to the Middle East to kill Arabs so the oil companies can profit from selling the oil under their sand. No more battleship Maines, no more Pearl Harbors, no more Gulfs of Tonkin, no more incubators in Kuwait, no more 9/11s, no more false flag attacks, no more lies. As a 100% disabled combat veteran, I say the best thing our government can do for us is to quit making more of us. But how do we get our government to support what's left of our troops by bringing them home while they're still alive? How do we achieve a new constitutional foreign and military policy? We, the people, must reassert our sovereignty, and the key to doing that is 9/11 truth. We must expose, indict, convict, and incarcerate the liars, the murderers, and the traitors, and then replace them with patriots devoted to the truth and to service to the people. Seek the truth, and the truth shall make us free. Thank you very much.
And there you have it. The truth about 9/11. A lot more people are speaking out. And it's really important. You know, it's like a lie. My grandmother used to say that when you drop a little pebble into a body of water, you get the rings that show up, and the rings get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And frankly, for myself, I always asked myself how people in government and people like him, like the guy we just heard talk, how could they go along with stuff like that? How could they remain silent for so long? And he said it himself. You come up in front of a really, really hard choice, either sacrificing your career or going along and doing what they have done. And we wonder why we have PTSD in the military and problems like that, and broken souls when they come home. This is what a lot of this show is about today, because there's so much disinformation, there's so much misinformation about everything. We don't know what to believe. And that's also another very good reason why so many people are turned off from researching, because a lot of us don't know how to recognize good sites and how to recognize good information, and if it's tricked, or because it's very easy to it's very easy for people who are watching us on Facebook, which is something I'm going to speak about later on, to make up a site. It's very easy to make up a website and make it look good and put GOV all over it, and so we never really know what we're dealing with. And the only way we can make sure that we have at least half-truths, and to be able to build on what's going on, or to be able to piece things together, is to have other people to talk to, have bouncing boards, which is something I'm really fortunate to have. I'll give you a really good example. The NASA moon landing. People are saying now that it was faked, and that Stanley Kubrick had a hand in helping them fake it in Hollywood, and then you see the 10 different reasons why, according to some people, it was fake and it was staged. And it's really interesting stuff, and you look at it and you go, really? Along with what NASA stands for and does? Because people are saying, scientists in particular, that space travel is impossible because of the Van Allen radiation belt. And the International Space Station videos shot behind a green screen from inside a plane. And then you got somebody else that's a friend of mine that says, and that is all BS. What 99% of the people don't understand, he continues, and very few of us will grasp this in our so-called, is that our so-called government has its own technology rooted out of Area 51 and other government scientific facilities, and that technology is, according to some estimates I've come across, as much as 50 to 100 years in advance of what we popularly consume in the public marketplace. I'm not certain that by the time we went to the moon the first time in 62, not 68, according to John Lear on YouTube, Project Camelot interview, that we possessed the technology that had been gleaned from downed UFOs at Roswell in New Mexico back in 1947. See what I'm saying? So you really don't know what to believe. And this is what I want to talk about on this show. Let's talk about Israel. Let's give a good example. Interestingly enough, when we speak about Israel, okay, you have two completely different viewpoints. Two types of people with two completely different outlooks on it. And that's exactly what governments want. They want us to continue to fight it out. On one hand, Israel is the cradle of civilization, God's chosen people, and they need to kill every Palestinian possible and rape their land. And then on the other side, you have people that think that, or that know, that Israel is the fiefdom of the Rothschild Zionist dynasty. That the country was invented in 1948, that the Rothschilds even paid for people to go inhabit the land, stealing from Palestine in every way possible, with the help of America, who has all kinds of experience with the genocide of its own people, the Indian nations. It depends on what you want to believe. Unfortunately, that's how it is. And governments are really nervous with people that know their history and can expose them. I don't know if people remember that comment by the CIA guy, the former CIA director, who said that when everything the American public knows is false, then we'll have realized our agenda. That's out there,